What kind of power could bring the most powerful empire in the world to its knees without raising a single sword? The answer lies in a story that's been passed down for generations. It's not just about history or religion. It's about freedom, faith, and the unstoppable force of a promise kept. In a land where people were trapped in chains under the grip of a king who thought he was a god, something incredible happened. God showed up, not quietly, but in ways no one could ignore. Welcome to a story where each step is a wake-up call. This is Story of Grace. Subscribe now so you don't miss stories that move, challenge, and change you. God speaks through Moses. What kind of person walks into the palace of the world's most powerful ruler, armed with nothing but a stick? That's where Moses comes in. He didn't think he was qualified. He wasn't a bold speaker or a natural leader. But God chose him, not for his skills, but for his willingness to listen. While watching sheep in the desert, Moses saw a bush on fire that wasn't burning up. From that flame, God spoke, "Go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go." Moses was stunned. "Me? Are you sure?" But God wasn't looking for credentials, he was looking for obedience. So Moses went, with his brother Aaron by his side. They entered Pharaoh's court and delivered the message. Let God's people go. Pharaoh didn't take them seriously. He refused. But that moment lit the fuse. God had stepped in. Not quietly, not gently. This was the start of a showdown that would shake an empire. Water turns to blood. What happens when the lifeline of a nation turns toxic overnight? That's what Egypt faced when the Nile, its pride, its source of life, turned into blood. This wasn't a magician's trick. This wasn't sleight of hand. This was God's first move. Moses stretched out his staff as God instructed. And right there, in front of everyone, the river changed. Fish floated to the surface. The water stank. People couldn't drink. Everything stopped. For 7 days, Egypt sat in this mess. But Pharaoh, he didn't move. His magicians managed to mimic it. And that made Pharaoh feel powerful. So he ignored the warning. But here's what matters. This was just the beginning. God wasn't playing games. He was being patient, giving Pharaoh chances to change his heart. But the more chances he got, the harder his heart became. Frogs everywhere. What if you couldn't open your oven, climb into bed, or walk into your kitchen without stepping on frogs? That's what Egypt woke up to next. Frogs were everywhere. And not just a few hopping around. Millions. It was a full invasion. Pharaoh was shaken. This time he called Moses and begged him to ask God to stop it. Moses prayed, and the frogs died. Piles of them were collected, and the smell was unbearable. But as soon as relief came, Pharaoh changed his mind. Again, he wouldn't let the people go. That tells you something. Sometimes people only want God when things are falling apart. And as soon as things feel better, they go right back to their old ways. Pharaoh wasn't changing, he was reacting. Then came the gnats. How do you fight something you can't see properly and can't get away from? That's what made the next plague so awful. Dust turned into gnats. Tiny insects filled the air, covered the skin, buzzed in the ears. There was no escape. Moses raised his staff, and the gnats came out of the ground like a living storm. They landed on everything and everyone. This time, the magicians couldn't copy it. They turned to Pharaoh and said, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh didn't care. He was stuck in his pride. And pride, left unchecked, always leads to destruction. Then flies swarmed in. What if you couldn't take a step without flies swarming around your face, your food, your home? That's what hit Egypt next. Flies poured into houses. They ruined everything. It was noisy, dirty, and impossible to escape. But something strange happened. Israelites in Goshen had none, not a single fly. That wasn't a coincidence. That was God drawing a line in the sand. He was showing Pharaoh, "These are my people, and you will not touch them." Pharaoh offered a deal. He said they could worship, but only in Egypt. Moses refused. Pharaoh was trying to bargain with God. And let's be clear, you can't bargain with the one who controls everything. The livestock die. What happens to a country when its economy collapses in a day? Egypt found out. In a single moment, all their livestock, horses, cattle, sheep, died. The fields were filled with the bodies of animals that once carried soldiers and plowed fields. But Goshen? Not a single animal was touched. That contrast was loud. God was showing he can protect in one place and allow judgment in another. Still, Pharaoh refused to let go. His pride was turning into a wall, and God was going to keep going until that wall cracked. Boils. Breakout. Imagine waking up, and your skin is burning. Painful boils cover your body. That's what Egypt faced next. Even Pharaoh's magicians were affected. They couldn't even stand in front of Moses anymore. Still, Pharaoh didn't listen. It was like every plague was making him angrier, harder, more determined to fight against the very power that could free him. But God wasn't surprised. He knew Pharaoh would resist. And each time he did, God made his message even clearer. Hail and fire. What kind of storm brings fire with ice? Egypt found out when God sent hail that crushed crops, smashed trees, and fell with bolts of fire. God gave a warning. Some Egyptians listened and moved their animals indoors. Others ignored it. The storm came. Destruction followed. But in Goshen, calm skies. Not a single piece of hail fell. Pharaoh begged for it to stop. He admitted he was wrong. Moses prayed and the storm ended. But the moment the skies cleared, Pharaoh went right back to saying no. Locusts arrive. What do you do when you look out and can't see the ground because of bugs? That's what Egypt faced when locusts came. They covered everything and ate what was left from the hail. Pharaoh's own officials told him, "Let them go. We're ruined." But he wouldn't listen. He tried to cut another deal. Moses didn't take it. This wasn't a business negotiation. It was a rescue mission. God was turning up the volume. Egypt was falling apart, but Pharaoh still held on to control. Darkness for 3 days. What would it feel like if daylight just disappeared? That's what Egypt experienced next. Total darkness for 3 days. No sun, no moon, just black. People stayed in their homes. No one moved. But Goshen, the lights stayed on. That's not science. That's God drawing lines again. Pharaoh tried one last deal. Moses said no. Pharaoh exploded and kicked Moses out. He said, "Don't come back." And Moses answered, "You won't see me again." The final warning. Before the last plague, God gave a warning. He told Moses, "This one will change everything. After this, Pharaoh will let you go." God gave instructions. Every Israelite family was to kill a lamb, paint its blood on the doorposts, and stay inside. That night, death would pass through Egypt, the death of the firstborn. At midnight, the cry of Egypt was heard. Every firstborn died, sons of kings, prisoners, servants, even animals. But in the homes with blood on the door, silence, protection, life. Pharaoh woke up to loss. He called Moses and said, "Go, leave. Take everyone." And just like that, they were free. The Israelites set free. They left Egypt not as beggars, but as people protected by God. They didn't sneak out. They walked out bold and blessed. The people who once beat them now handed them gold and silver. God didn't just pull them out of slavery. He showed that nothing can stop him. Not a king, not a country, not even 10 disasters. Why it matters today? You might think this is just a story, but it's more than that. It's a reminder that God sees, hears, and moves, that when people cry out, he listens. Sometimes we feel stuck like the Israelites, trapped by problems, fear, or failure. But just like then, God is still able, still powerful, still fighting for his people. Pharaoh had 10 chances, 10, and he said no every time. What about us? Are we saying no when God says move? Are we ignoring warnings? This story isn't just ancient, it's alive. Thanks for watching Story of Grace. If this story hit home, if it opened your eyes or reminded you of something important, do one thing right now, hit that subscribe button. We're here to bring stories that inspire, challenge, and grow your faith. Like, share, and drop a comment. We love hearing how these stories speak to you. Until next time, keep your heart soft, your eyes open, and your faith strong.